Hi, everybody. Very good morning to you all. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Lalita Balakrishnan, Principal, MOB Vaishnav College for Women, Ms. Uma Maheshwari, Head of the Department of Sociology, MOB Vaishnav College, Ms. Lata Suresh, Honorary Director of CSIM, Dr. Priya Iyer, Additional Controller of Examinations and Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science, MOB Vaishnav College, Dr. C. Kumar Babu, our speaker for today, and to all dear students who have joined us for this webinar on tackling mental and emotional stress. CSIM has been fortunate to be associated with MOP since 2001. MOP has been the first institutional partner for us, and we are very grateful for their continued support. I now request Dr. Lalita Balakrishnan, Principal MOP Vaishnav College for Women, to deliver the welcome address.
On behalf of MOP Vaishnav College for Women, I am extremely honored to welcome you all to the student webinar on tackling mental and emotional stress. I am indebted to our resource person, Dr. Kumara Babu, for having taken time off his busy schedule to address the students on this topic. I am also grateful to CSIM for partnering with the Department of Sociology, and I give my deep sense of appreciation to both Ms. Mari Bhanu and Ms. Uma Maheshwari of the Sociology Department. I'm sure in this stressful period of COVID, when we are really not able to do what we actually feel like doing, this is a great topic to have a speaker followed by question and answers for the students. I wish the session is really beneficial, and I'm sure there is going to be a lot of learning, especially for the students. Thank you, sir, for accepting to be our guest on this show.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm happy to introduce the speaker for today, Professor C. Kumar Babu. He's a MD, PhD, and a DPM, an alumnus of Madras Medical College. After 30 years of service in the Tamil Nadu State Medical Department, he retired as reader in psychiatry and has over 3 decades of clinical teaching and research experience in the field of medicine. He has taught postgraduate and undergraduate medical students, psychologists, social workers, nurses, magistrates, and criminologists. Oxford University Press has published this article, The Relevance of Yoga and Meditation in the Treatment of Common Mental Disorders, in the year 2009. At the Government Institute of Mental Health, Chennai, he taught the medical model of meditation to more than 1,200 members of the public as a part of the outreach program of the bicentenary year celebration of the hospital. As a consultant for Indian Diabetes Research Foundation, he has trained over 4,000 doctors in India on stress management. He is an invited guest lecturer for many international, national, and zonal medical conferences. As an external faculty for the Tamil Nadu State Judicial Academy, he had trained the magistrates and sub-judges of Tamil Nadu in child psychology and stress management. He is RCSI faculty for the last 20 years and has been conducting counseling sessions for our students. I now request this amazing personality, Dr. C. Kumar Babu, to address our students on how to tackle mental and emotional stress. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you. Hello, friends. Today is going to be a model workshop which you can participate. And if you pay attention, you can have a lifelong impact on your life with these few basic techniques which are proven all over the world. Managing stress. First, let's see what is stress. Simple definition which all of you can understand, stress is the difference between how you want things to happen and how exactly they are happening. To give you a very, very common example, you have sent a emotionally charged SMS message to your friend, and you see the two blue ticks which says that that person has seen the message, and you're eagerly waiting for him to reply, but that friend doesn't reply, and you go into stress. Simple example. You want things to happen in a particular way, and they are happening in a different way, and that causes stress. To make it even more simpler, we will see why this stress is so important. This is the law of the jungle, which is still holding good for our life. Predators and prey both have to come to the same watering hole for their water. So this deer is always alert. The slightest movement somewhere threatens life. Therefore, this is a system in our brain, the limbic system, which is kept treasured deep inside the brain, in the very center of the brain. The green structures, what you are seeing there, especially the almond-shaped amygdala. Now, any threat for the ancient man, primitive man, in the night times, in the jungle, before fire was discovered, a slithering noise can mean a deadly snake is going to attack him, or a mere growl in the distance shows a tiger is approaching. So any noise triggers in him the survival fear, threat to life. He has no time to rationalize and think. Instinctively, he gets ready. And that is the limbic system, the emotional system, especially the amygdala. Now, in modern day, there is no threat to life. When you face an examination and you don't know the answers for many questions, there is no threat to life. But still, the same old limbic system kicks in and creates a sense of panic in us, dry mouth, constricted throat, fluttering heart, butterflies in the abdomen, urge to go to toilet, muscles becoming tense, sweating profusely. All this is limbic activation. That is what we feel as stress. Now let's see the common stressors. The first stressor on the physical body is illness, aging, illness, jara, vyadi, aging and sickness, highly stressful. Second stress is the physical attractiveness. Cosmetic industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry because people want to become fairer, more attractive, body parts to be adjusted, plastic surgery, everything. People are worried about their attractiveness. Constantly dark, fair, tall, short, all those stuff. The second kind of stress, apart from the body, is the emotional involvement with other person. Love affairs. Many suicides, if you dig deep, will find the relationship gone sour. So physical, emotional, and then comes our academics. Reading, writing, arithmetic. Academics can be really threatening. Pass, fail, cut off marks, entrance examination, NEET, SAT scores. So intellectual stress, emotional stress, physical stress. And then if you manage to pass your the examination, get a degree, and go to the corporate world, constant stress of deadlines, snowed down under file work, and work stress. And the famous economy, money, financial stress. However much money we are making, we want to make more. So financial stress. So physical, emotional, intellectual, professional, financial, These two glasses represent the discrimination we still follow in our villages on social classes, social stress, and especially for urban area, commutation stress. You can't get into the city bus or train and come out with a fresh clothing. You'll be crumpled beyond recognition. So physical stress, emotional stress, intellectual stress, professional stress, financial stress, sociological stress, commutation stress. These are the common stressors. Now, whatever happens around you, whether you're locked down, whether you're locked in or locked out, whatever, everything can be taken from a human being. But the last of the human freedom, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, that is what we say we are born free to choose how we approach situations. Situations may not be under our control. We cannot drive away Corona overnight. We cannot change the mind of the RBI governor when he scraps away the RBI bonds. We cannot change the situation, but we can change ourselves. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. The golden words of Viktor Frankl, a Viennese psychiatrist, father of logotherapy. Now, stress actually means we are used to a certain lifestyle. Morning we get up, open the tap, water flows out. We switch on the light switch, light comes on. We press the laptop button, laptop becomes active. So we are comfortable. But one day, suddenly, when you open the tap, no water is coming out. When you put on the electric switch, there is no light. When you press the laptop button, nothing happens. It has conked out. Now, you are threatened with an unfamiliar, uncomfortable situation. That means the comfort zone which you are used to, where you feel safe and in control, has now broken down. You enter the fear zone, lack of self-confidence to handle a new situation. You find excuses not to act. Others tell you you can't do this. You are affected by it. So when you leave your comfort zone, you are in fear zone. The automatic response is to go back to your shell into comfort zone. If you do that, learning becomes impossible. When you are bold enough to step out of your comfort zone, willing to face your fears, you enter the next zone, the learning zone, where you deal with challenges and problems, you acquire new skills, and you're extending your comfort zone, so you're able to absorb more and more situational uncomfortableness, still manage effectively. As you keep expanding, that is where growth lies. The more you stay in comfort zone, more security you clamor for, you can never ever grow. You have to come out of it, face your fears, learn to tackle new situation, and that is the way to grow. Find your purpose in life. Live your highest dreams. Set newer goals. Extend your horizons. Conquer objectives. All these are possible only when you are willing to step out of comfort zone and face your fears, because whatever you want in life is always found on the other side of fear. If you buckle down to fear, if you are fearful, you don't want to step out, you get stunted. There is no growth. So please learn that. Be willing to come out and change and grow. This is the Greek god of death called as Thanatos. In human biology, you always find life-building chemicals and life-destroying chemicals. Anabolic, catabolic. Same thing is found in human psychology. There are drives, wishes, desires for you to grow, enhance life, celebrate life, improve the quality of living. That is called the eros, E-R-O-S. The exact opposite of is this particular man called Thanatos. Life destructive, life unfriendly, fearful, restrictive, never allows you to grow. We always, the more percentage of fears we overcome in life, more successful we become. If you succumb to fear, uncertainty, you go back to your shell, you want security, growth is impossible. The point now is we are going to discuss certain techniques for growth, to reduce stress, to manage stress. Thanatos will kick in and say, don't do it. This is not going to work for you. This is not for you. This is silly. Don't waste your time. The life destructive, life blocking Thanatos will kick in automatically. You must be clever enough, smart enough to overcome that. So let's go to the solutions. There are many solutions to manage stress, starting from the physical body. The paradigm here is body and mind is an unit. There is no body, comma, mind. There is no body / mind. No. No body hyphen mind. No. Body mind is one unitary thing. Anything affecting the body will affect the mind, and vice versa. Anything affecting the mind will affect the body. Therefore, making use of this physiological paradigm, if you are able to relax your muscles voluntarily, when the body is in complete relaxation, the law of progression states the mind also has to relax. Because when you are under stress and tension, without your knowledge, unconsciously, your muscles start tensing. Therefore, using this mechanism, there is a technique called Jacobson's technique of progressive muscle relaxation. You're all smart, intelligent youngsters who are familiar with the internet. Just type this in Google, progressive muscle relaxation, and put Jacobson. You will get a 2-page download. It is public domain. There is no charge. It is free. You can download, learn the simple steps. It takes 15 minutes to do the whole exercise. But the benefit is, however tense you are, however stressed you are, within 15 minutes, you can offload this stress. You can feel it. In 1940s, Jacobson discovered it. Even after 80 years, we are still using it as of date to control anxiety in anxiety patients, to control panic in panic patients, to make obsessive relax, depressive to get their mood back. Very powerful technique, especially for stress. So progressive muscular relaxation, Google it, download it. If you're not able to do it, revert back to me, I will help you. The second technique is called the modification of breathing. Heart is almost entirely involuntary, heartbeat. Flexing your arms and flexing your legs are absolutely voluntary. But breathing is very peculiarly semi-voluntary. That is, you have a limited amount of control. For example, you can breathe slowly for 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. You can hold the breath for a few seconds. You have a limited control, partial control, semi-voluntary. That is a great blessing nature gave us, because by slowing down the breathing, by making the breath more gentle and even and smooth, it is possible to reduce the metabolic rate, and thus it is possible to reduce tension and stress. Very, very simple technique. Sit comfortably in a chair. Don't cross your legs, don't cross your arms. Let the hands rest on your laps. Let both feet be firmly placed on the ground. Sit in a couch or a chair. Breathe in for 5 seconds. Breathe out for 5 seconds. That means one cycle, 5 plus 5 is 10 seconds. In 1 minute, we'll be taking 6 cycles. The normal rhythm is 18 cycles. When you bring it down by 2/3, immediately mind's alpha waves appear in the brain. A sense of relaxation, calmness descends on you, regardless of the stressor and the stress. Within 5 minutes, if you're able to do this breath exercise, you will feel very comfortable. Not only that, we Indians know you are not simply breathing oxygen, you are breathing in prana. Prana is life, vital force. Therefore, when you are collecting more and more pranic energy, your body and mind become very, very powerful. The entire pranic healing, Reiki, our Hatha Yoga, Geranda Samhita, all talk only about the breathing. We as medical people advise simple techniques anybody can do. Sit quietly, breathe in 5 seconds, breathe out 5 seconds. No need to hold the breath. Do it gently, do it calmly, softly. You will get the results immediately. The other thing with the breath is to count backwards. In this technique, a fundamental technique given to all the Shaolin monks, the Zen monks, Buddhist monks, even lay people all over Southeast Asia. This is a technique of breath counting. That is, once again, you are sitting quietly, you are breathing normally. You are not doing any abnormal breathing. You are not slowing the breath. You are not extending the breath. You are not holding the breath. You are breathing normally. Only thing, every time you make an out breath, breathing out, expiration, mentally you say 10. Next time you breathe out, you say 9. Like that, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 10 breaths you have to count backward. That is one cycle. And like that, 3 cycles. Second cycle will start again with 10. You will not go to 11 and all. So 10 to 0, 10 to 0, 10 to 0. Normal breathing, backward breath counting. 80% of your stress will immediately get jettisoned off. I told you, very simple techniques, no investment of money, no instrumentation, no monthly fees, nothing. You and 5 minutes of your time, any place, anywhere. But please remember, Thanatos will kick in and say, this is idiotic, this is foolish, let me not do it, let me do something else. Don't succumb to that. These techniques are there for more than 1,500 years. Millions and millions of people have been doing it, are doing it, will be doing it in the world. Even Europe and America, they are following it now. In fact, American Psychiatric Association is now agreeing that these techniques work to reduce anxiety and stress. I have submitted a review article in the Oxford Press. I have mentioned this. So, 2 techniques, breath counting and slow breathing. I have finished that. Meditation, we'll keep it a little bit later. Don't get immediately scared of meditation. It is not religious exercise. It is a simple psychological exercise. We'll come to it later. Affirmations are nothing but positive sentences, because more than 80% of our thoughts every day, without our knowledge, the default mode of mind is to keep frightening you. What will happen to me? Who will take care of me? Will this work out? Will my love get returned? Will I be safe? Will I get a job? Will I get married? Will I get a child? Will the child study well? Will my parents live long with me? Will I be happy? Will I live in a better house? Will I have a better car? What if happens this? What if happens that? Constantly, we frighten ourselves. That is called as automatic negative thoughts. Remember, the tiger and the deer. life is threatening. Immediately we switch to the primitive mode of die, do or die, flight or fright. Not at all necessary, but limbic system doesn't know that. It keeps firing automatically. So they are called automatic negative thoughts, in short, ANTs, ants. These ants in your brain slowly eat away your vitality. That is why affirmations, where first person singular, I, present tense continuous, I am doing this, I am feeling happy, I am feeling energetic. Take 3 or 4 affirmations. While brushing teeth every morning, make a lifestyle change. Repeat few affirmations. When you're traveling in the bus or sitting in the back seat of a car when you are not driving, instead of simply gazing and gathering wool in the mind throughout the commutation time, repeat this. Whenever you are bored, repeat this. Before going to bed, repeat this. Type it out, print out in the computer, print out, stick it somewhere where you can see every day. Affirmations do work, but they should be backed up by actions. I am feeling healthy because I am walking every day 15 minutes. You have to give evidence for the brain. See, the platform is full of self-help books. They keep telling you, need not do anything. Just keep repeating positive thinking. I am the richest man in the world. I am the richest man in the world. No, that is the shortest way to go to the mental hospital. Affirmation without backup action is delusional. You have to do certain actions. Tell the brain, I am doing this, therefore I am feeling healthy. Because you can't cheat biology. Brain is a supercomputer. But when you link your actions and affirmations, they sink into your subconscious and you become more energetic, more healthy, more happy. So affirmations, write down 3 or 4 and then make it sure, first person singular. Don't say, I will be happy. That means right now you are not happy. So first person singular, present tense continuous, I am feeling. First person singular, present tense continuous, positive declaration. Don't say, I should not feel pain, I should not be unhappy. No, you have to say the positive. Always affirm and assert the positive. Okay, I am feeling happy, I am feeling confident because yesterday I have prepared for this more than 2.5 hours, I have revised, therefore I am feeling confident. Tell the action, indicate the action which you have done and affirm. Next is visualization. Take a look at this slide. Without doing anything, if you keep looking at it for a few seconds or 1 or 2 minutes, green, lush, natural green has got a great healing capacity on the mind. That is why when you travel in many parts of India, where paddy fields for acres, hundreds of 200 acres, 300 acres, when you travel, you never feel tired. But when you travel in barren lands, within 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, you will get bored. Lush green color has got healing capacity, especially trees, plants. That is why spending time in nature is one of the best things you can do to reduce stress. 2 things you want to remember: lush green color and some kind of water body. It can be a river, it can be a waterfall. If it is there, it adds up. So you can create your wallpapers in your computer. Whenever you're tired, just sit before, slow down your breathing, keep looking at it. Within 3 or 4 minutes, you will feel much better. So visualizations, where you calm sceneries, you might have visited them, waterfalls, gardens, mountain peaks, Himalayas, or you might have seen videos or photographs or wallpapers. It doesn't matter. Human brain, listen carefully, human brain cannot differentiate a real experience from a powerfully imagined experience. That is why when you see mega serial, when the heroine is suffering, you cry buckets. They are called the mirror neurons. We are all one unity. Only the skin separates us. In the brain, mirror neurons make you empathize with others. Therefore, you need not have a real experience. A wallpaper with green color, lush green natural things, water bodies, when you keep looking at them, you will feel better. So visualize calm scenes, visualize calm areas where you visited, sit quietly, and you will feel much better. Emotional freedom technique is a very, very powerful tool. It talks about meridians in the body on which acupressure, acupuncture science is built on, which is very much true because when doctors injected colored dyes into the system, these dyes went into some very spidery web-like distribution, which are not veins, they are not arteries, they are not lymphatics. So there seems to be a lattice lacework of these meridians in the body with the Chinese and India and China, two countries, our Bodhi Dharma, Noku Varma and all those things. They were aware of these meridians. So acupressure, acupuncture came from this. And now there is a technique discovered about 30, 40 years back. They are called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. They teach you the acupressure points in your system, mostly face, neck, chest, and hands. They point out 12 or 14 points, acupoint, meridian points, where you tap and do some basic mental exercise. Emotional freedom technique is available in the public domain. The entire manual is available. You can download it free of cost and go through it. There are videos available on the same technique where you can learn. There are interactive sessions are available free of cost. You can ask questions, post your questions on the chat, get your answers. One round of emotional freedom technique done even not completely correctly, you will get 75% of stress immediately lessened. So as usual, you are all computer savvy, netizens, Google emotional freedom technique, go to the authentic sites. It's called the manual. It's about 30 to 40 pages. Download it. As usual, if you have any difficulty in locating it or finding it, shoot me a mail. Your department has my email. Definitely within 24 hours, I'll reply you. I'll help you to get wherever you can get free of cost. So that finishes all other things except meditation. Now let's go into this. Let me first assert few basic things and disclaimers. Meditation is not a religious practice. Meditation is a psychological exercise. It does not depend on religion. There is no question of discussing morality, ethicality here, pure medical thing. From psychiatric point of view, we now call it as mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive treatment, etc., etc. Very simple technique. The 4 R's, remember. The first R talks about a reference point. That is, in your mind, you must have a sound bite. It can be anything. It can be Ram, it can be Rahim, it can be Yesu, it can be anything. It can, as somebody said, it can be also Coca-Cola, makes no difference. It's a reference point. You sit in a chair, close your eyes, and think about this chosen word. Let us say X. I'm not taking Ram or Rahim, very turbulent days nowadays, so I'm just taking X. Within few seconds, when you think X, 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 without your knowledge, because please note this, your mind is always on autopilot. An autopilot mind is controlled by limbic system. That means it is fear oriented, threat oriented, anxiety oriented, fear oriented. And 90% of the time, our minds are on autopilot. They don't require your conscious attention. These techniques point to your voluntary, deliberate attention is a prefrontal function on the cortex. Executive function of the mind is to choose deliberately an object on which you attend to. That pulls the mind away from the limbic fear to alertness of the surroundings, freshness, or living in the present moment. And this is very important. So when you take, let us say, Ram or Rahim or Yesu, whatever you're taking, you think about it once, you say the name once in the mind mentally, no need to move your tongue. Second time you say, not fast, give a lot of time. Without your knowledge, you will find the mind drifting away into some thoughts. It is natural, it is expected, it is physiological, it is psychological. They are part and parcel of the exercise. They are not disturbances, they are not deviations, they are not interruptions, they are not interferences. They have to be there, they will be there. So the second R is called as random thoughts. First R is reference point, your chosen sound bite. Second R is the random thought where you think something else. The third R is the most important R. You realize instead of being in your sound bite, you are in random thoughts. Most important thing in realization, you should not curse yourself and say, what kind of mind am I having? Even for 5 seconds, I'm not able to concentrate. I am thinking of this. Non-judgmental, dispassionate, non-serious, playful attitude. Like a video game. Nobody is asking you to concentrate. Nobody is asking you to control the mind. They are asking you to observe. Instead of being in the reference sound bite, I am in random thoughts. Great. I have realized it. Now, the last R, I return to the sound bite. I come back to my Ram or Rahim. Again, random thoughts come. I realize it. I'm aware of it. I'm not passing judgments. I'm not cursing myself. I realize it's natural. Once I know that I'm in random thoughts, I return back to my first R. This all the 4 R's make one unit of meditation. This will happen again and again and again. For 10 to 15 minutes, you sit. Don't fight with your mind. Underline these words. Non-serious, non-judgmental, dispassionate, playful attitude. Random thoughts, reference point. This side, that side. The movement is meditation, not the reference point, not the thought. Moving to coming back, moving to swinging. It's a swinging movement. And as you swing, slowly, 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 your consciousness changes into more calmingness. You don't force it, it becomes automatic. Once again, this is a very simple technique made very, very popular by our Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. It's called Transcendental Meditation. I've been there for more than few years. I've been to the headquarters of Maharishi. I have spoken to Maharishi. It's a very simple technique, very powerful technique. You can practice. No religion, nothing spiritual, purely psychological, but very effective to reduce your stress. As I kept telling you, modern psychiatry talks about mindfulness-based stress reduction. See this. Your mind is either full of negative thoughts on autopilot, or You are mindful, deliberately attending to sensations, deliberately attending to perceptions, deliberately observing your thoughts, deliberately observing your emotions, the feelings, mindful, 1L. Otherwise, mind is full, 2L of negative thoughts. Mindful, non-judgmental, dispassionate. See, thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They are not facts. Just because you think your friend is going to ditch you, just because you think you're going to fail, they are not facts. Thoughts are like clouds, but you are the clear sky of consciousness. Clouds don't stick to you. You are all pervasive. You are free. Clouds come, change forms, disappear. Fresh clouds come, change forms, disappear. But your awareness, you are a conscious being. You are aware of this thought. You are not judging it. You have no negative emotion towards it. You are not against it. You are observer. You simply observe thoughts. They move away. Next thought comes. You observe it. Deliberately observe it. They are not facts. They come, they go. Don't be judgmental. Don't dislike them. Don't hate them. Don't try to suppress them. Don't try to distract yourself from them. If you do all those things, they'll become very powerful. Realize you are the pure awareness, able to observe anything you want, able to deploy attention on anything you want. Clouds, thoughts are like clouds. They are not facts. They come, they go. But your awareness, your consciousness remains permanent. So, before I close, when you focus on positive things, negative things go back, like the foreground and background. Value-based living. Once again, value is not a philosophical term. It's a psychological term. Value is a mental state which makes you feel good about yourself. Always following an action which does not violate the rights of others. You are preparing to go to college, already you are running late, but still, before Nungambakam bus stand, whatever there is, you see a blind person standing, visually handicapped person standing there, unable to cross the huge traffic in those days before lockdown on the Mahatma Gandhi road. You spend few minutes guiding him across safely. After that action, for few seconds, you feel fulfilled because you have done an action where you don't get rewards, you don't get money, but you exhibited a humane compassion. That makes you feel good for no reason, for few seconds. So value is a mental state which makes you feel good about yourself, which follows an action without violating the rights of others. So if you keep doing actions, 6 or 7 actions per day, friendliness, integrity, compassion, laughter, inspiring others, helping others, or mastering some activity yourself, feel skillful, feel autonomous, feel in control. All these things make you feel good. I call this the gung-ho feeling, the psychic gasoline, gumption. When you build sufficient gasoline, psychic gasoline, gumption, stresses cannot deflate you. So value-based living, and this is the last slide. Physically, health is a value. Do some exercise. Get energized. Physically, be energized. Emotionally, with people, be connected. Listen to them. Try to reach out. Try to help close people with whom you are very close. So emotionally, get connected. Intellectually, focus on few things. Don't be a jack of all trades. Be master of 1 or 2 things. Focus. Learn every day. Be a lifelong learner. And spiritually, aligned to a higher purpose in life. Can be God, can be nature. When all these are together, they are called full engagement. When you are fully engaged, stress can never touch you. So I'll stop here. and take few questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Doctor. That was brilliant. I liked especially the way you said kill the ants, the auto negative thought. Uh, all our students have been sending a lot of questions, so I'll just pick up a few. The rest will be have their answers replied by Doctor in the YouTube channel itself in the comment section because there are more than about 50 questions already. I will start with one interesting question from one Ms. Shweta asking, how do we stop overthinking?
You must be very happy that you have the faculty of able to think. It's a blessing. It is a quality of thought which is not that. See, scientists overthink every day. They get engrossed. 18 hours they spend in lab. They forget food. They forget water. Nobody complains about it. Overthinking generally means you are unnecessarily gathering wool, mostly negative. They come under the autopilot of automatic negative thoughts. If you are having positive thoughts, if you are having confident thoughts, if you are having compassionate thoughts, if you are having purposeful thoughts, you should never reduce it. You should actually increase it. But if you are frightening yourself, unnecessary thoughts, venial thing, that thing, this thing, that has to be addressed. It is not the amount of thoughts, it is the quality of thoughts. Either they are positive, or they are negative, or they are neutral. If they're negative, if you're negative thoughts, you have to immediately challenge it with affirmations. I keep telling people, no, never allow a negative thought to flash into your consciousness without you challenging it. That requires mindfulness. You must be aware what you are thinking, in what way it is wrong. That's a cognitive aspect. Cognitive distortions have to be corrected. Don't say, I am always a failure. No, I failed in this examination. I am not a failure always because all these years I've been passing. In future, I'm going to pass. So people overgeneralize. So overthinking is actually not an acceptable term. As long as the quality of thinking is good, if you're overthinking, I'll be very happy. I'll be saluting you actually. But if you're negatively overthinking, then you have to interfere. Next, yeah.
That leads us to asking how to overcome procrastination.
Value-based, if you like something, if you get inspired to do something, you don't require external motivation. If you hate doing something, if you fear failure, if you feel you are incompetent, if you feel that you are not up to it, you find it boring, naturally you'll procrastinate. Few things you have to do, like once you pass your college and go to your job, come July 30th or July 31st, you have to submit your income tax return. Nobody likes it. If you procrastinate, they'll put a fine on you. But there are a few things which you love to do, you want to do. Focus on that. Life is not meant to be enjoyed 24 hours a day. Life is meant to temper yourself, build your discipline, steel yourself. That is growth. Doing the easy things again and again make you flabby. Doing the tough things will make you lean and mean and muscular. Like running a marathon. Sitting in the sofa, lounging in the sofa, eating potato chips is so comfortable. But running a marathon is so difficult. For that matter, any athletics, for that matter, any scientific achievement, any artistic thing, you have to put your work. You can't have unlimited freedom without responsibility. The hippie movement was great to begin with, but it ended logically because somebody has to take responsibility for making food, taking care of children. Free love doesn't work continuously. Somebody has to work. So procrastination is because fear of failure. You think you are not up to it. The work frightens you because it is beyond your capacity. You find out because without doing something, you cannot declare it is difficult. And it became difficult because you kept on postponing it. What is the deadline? Simple example I'll give you. Electricity bill is due on 15th of every month. Let us keep that way. Or once in 2 months. The EB office sends you the bill 15 days in advance. You receive the bill online or offline. You see deadline is long away. You just check it and you forget it. But the deadline keeps moving. Time and tide waits for none. It keeps moving, and suddenly you have to pay it today, and you are in a mess. That is the quadrant 2 activity, urgent but important. Quadrant 1 activity, where you get burnt out. So procrastination is mainly due to inadequacy, boredom, not willing to exercise self-discipline. So you have to tackle it.
Okay. The next question, we have a lot of students, so it is basically about their sleep hours. So one girl is asking how to handle stress during night time because of stressful mind
Yeah,
and not.
I got it. Very interesting question, because daytime you can distract yourself by talking with others or watching TV or FM radio. When everything is cut off, you have to deal only with yourself. And if you are not comfortable with yourself, for example, in a room, you are sitting, somebody whom you hate violently sits next to you. You are not talking, he is not talking, or she is not talking, but you feel uncomfortable. Why? Because you are with a person whom you hate. At night times, you are with your mind, and if you are not comfortable with your mind, this is the hallmark of neurosis. You have to be very comfortable with yourself, self-acceptance. So the practical answer to that question is progressive muscle relaxation. Do it at night. Whether you sleep or not, you will feel wonderful. 90% time you will sink into sleep. So learn progressive muscle relaxation. Do it at night time whenever you're not feeling sleepy. And sleep hygiene says, if you are not feeling sleepy, you have no right to be in the bed. Jump out, take the book, read for the next examination. When you feel sleepy, go sleep. Sleep hygiene says that. If you're not sleeping, don't lie on the bed, because it conditions negatively sleeplessness on the bed. So either you do PMR, if you're not sleeping, you're a lucky person, you got some extra hours at your disposal, work. When you are sufficiently tired, nature will make you sleep. This is for a person who is within quotation normal person. If there is a disease background, things are different. You require chemical help. But if you're a normal person facing normal stress of life, do PMR, progressive muscle relaxation, or get up and do some work, whichever work is important, because you are blessed with 2 extra hours. Others are snoring and sleeping, but you are wide awake, so you got extra hours. Both things you can do. And if you have any other problem, seek professional help.
So the student was asking us, like, they keep studying endlessly until they realize that, yes, I'm having a too stressed of mind. So they're not able to plan their hours, how much time I could spend on studies. So it's only after they get stressed.
I don't for a minute believe any student can study endlessly. Nature sees to that. Even I, when I was MD examination, I used to break frequently, because after 40 to 50 minutes of concentrated effort, the brain glucose level runs out. After that, if you study, you are only reading, you are not studying. It's a waste of time. In fact, quantum learning techniques, we insist no sitting should be more than 40 minutes at one stretch. Once you reach 40 minutes stretch, there must be a 5 minutes break at the table. You should not leave the table. You do some sitting exercise, stretching exercise, you do some breathing exercise, close your eyes, visualize, do something, and then go for it, because quantum learning says whatever you learn first and whatever you learned last in a session, those two are stored in memory free of charge. So by breaking, you get 2 points extra. Instead of studying 4 hours, if you study for 6 session, broken session, you get 12 points free in your memory system. So I don't believe in endless studying. I don't advise it. You have to break. 45 minutes is the time. Break for 5 minutes. After 90 minutes, break for 10 minutes. But then people break easily. They don't come back. That's a problem. That requires discipline. So endless studying is counterproductive. And 1 minute. And Simply studying is not going to help you. Effective notes taking, translating these notes into mind mapping, reviewing, working on your short-term memory, putting memory cues for retrieval. All this you have to study. That's called quantum learning. People simply read. With the read chemistry 40 pages, then go to physics 40 pages or whatever. Whatever they read in chemistry is completely wiped off. Without frequent breaks, understand short-term can only contain 7 units of information. Short-term memory limit is 7 units of information. If you go for the 8th unit of information, out of the first 7, one thing will be ejected from the memory stores. That is why people get disheartened. Whole night they studied about 20 pages. Next morning, everything is blank. Because without revision, within the first 2 hours, 50% memory trace is lost. Please refer to quantum learning techniques. There is a book called as Quantum Learning.
Okay.
Learn by it. It's easy, very powerful. Yes, ma'am. Next.
We have just 2 more questions. We're running short of time. One is
Yeah.
from Ms. Vaishnavi. She says, I realize that being shut in a place and getting lack of attention from near and dear ones has ruined my temper. How does one improve on controlling anger?
Attention seeking is generally a juvenile, infantile behavior. As an adult, in fact, we tell you, it will be shocking to many of you. Love per se is not an adult need, it's an adult want. For infants, love is a need without cuddling of the human mother or a surrogate human mother. We get a syndrome called sudden infant death syndrome, especially in the Kapagams and where they keep the babies, orphan babies or whatever. The babies are given proper nutrition, but the cuddling is not there. Human touch is not there. So without any reason, these infants die, and it's called sudden infant death syndrome. For an adult, I don't think attention is that important. You are an important person by yourself, whether people recognize or not. Constantly seeking attention is not a very healthy attitude. You focus your attention. See, I keep telling you, if you cannot change a situation, you have to change yourself. You attend. There are hundreds of things important in life right now. Post-COVID life, you have to prepare. Your mother and father will be knowing about the economics. Now the highest interest rate is 6.5%. Everything is closed. You don't know where you're going to keep the money. So you have to plan for the future, financial planning. Your next semester, you have to plan. Your skills, you have to sharpen, learn new hobbies. Put attention on valuable things. Don't clamor for attention. Like children, no? Temper tantrums. They hold breath until somebody attends. It's not a healthy behavior. So whether people attend or not, you attend. I keep telling people, nobody can abandon you as long as you are following them. So if they are not attending, you attend to important things. Doesn't matter. Right.
Okay. So here goes the last question. Suji has asked this. If we are surrounded by pessimistic people, will that affect our personality too?
100%. It's called attitude contagion. Suji, very nice question. If you are surrounded by pessimistic people, run to the nearest room and shut the door tight. Their attitude will rub onto you. Attitude contagion. They will constantly deflate you. So either you put some earplugs in your ears, or you put some geographical distance. In the same house, run to the other room. If nothing is working, go to the toilet and lock yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think, thank you so much. I think with that, we end the session today, Doctor. It's been such an interesting and inspiring session. I will agree with all the other candidates who are posting their comments. And I'm sure that we'll come back with a different topic and address our students again. You did make us really feel lighter and brighter after listening to you.
Good.
I'd like to record my thanks to Mr. Manoj Santalia, Secretary, MOP Vaishnav College for Women, Dr. Lalita Balakrishnan, Principal, MOP Vaishnav College, Ms. Uma Maheshwari, HOD of Sociology, Ms. Lata Suresh, Honorary Director of CSIM, Dr. Priya Iyer, the technical support for this entire webinar. She is the Additional Controller of Examinations and Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science, MOP Vaishnav, John, our webmaster, and for all of you students who are here with us today. Thank you. Stay motivated. Stay positive. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.